The Big Time by Fritz Leiber. So this story was originally published in 2 parts in Galaxy magazine in 1958, and it won the Hugo Award that year for Best Novel. I have this later Ace reprint of this one, and it's in pretty good shape. But I also have the first paperback edition when this was put together to form this very short novel. And this is the first paperback, but it's in really rough shape. I've just kind of kept it around just as a kind of a prop in a way. I'd like to find a better copy at some point. But this little copy is only 129 pages, so it's more of like a novella or a novelette maybe. And it's a very fast, easy read. I read this over 2 days, but I think you could easily read this in one day if you just sat down and went after it. Now, I've read a couple other things from Leiber in the past. I've read The Wanderer, and this was a big novel. I had some issues with this one. Overall, it was pretty interesting. He wrote this in a multiple point of view format, which was kind of new or maybe revolutionary at the time. So I give him some respect for that, but there was a lot of other issues that kind of made me not like that one so much. And then with Matt and Richard, I've read The Best of Fritz Leiber, and some of these stories were really good, some of them not so much. And I think this story here, getting back to The Big Time, kind of follows along the same suit. There's parts of this that I really liked and parts of it that I didn't. And so let's just kind of get into what this book is about. Because I think the idea and the concept of what the big time is probably the most fascinating part of this and the part that I like the most. And so what it's about is this is a very long war that's been going on, and it's happening through time travel. And it's kind of spanning billions of years. And we have a group of characters that are in this kind of bubble outside of space and time, called The Big Time. That's where we get the name of this story. And they kind of operate this little space station, if you will, and they're entertainers, and they have these soldiers that are fighting this time war come in, have some rest and relaxation before they go back out on more missions. Now, these time travelers are going backwards in times, forwards in times. They're trying to manipulate history and the timeline to fit the needs of our side. And our sides, they call themselves the Spiders. So this is all of our point of view characters are told from this faction called the Spiders. And the other side that they're battling against are called the Snakes. And this bubble where they kind of hang out, like I said, it's outside of space and time, and it's called the Big Time. And when these soldiers go out to these missions that they go on, that's called the Little Time. So that's like what we're used to. This is a linear timeline, a point in history where they're trying to do something to change the outcome of history in this war. Now, both sides are fighting back and forth. It seems like every time the Spiders do something, the Snakes kind of retaliate, and it kind of sets this war to kind of go back and forth. And it seems like history is kind of hard to nudge and to change. And we get a little glimpse of this in the beginning because some of our soldiers that first come back, they were sent on a mission. And what seems to have happened was the Snakes, this opposing side, they had went and stolen baby Einstein and tried to get him over into Nazi Germany to be on the side of the Nazis. And so our Spider soldiers had just gone on a mission to try to get baby Einstein back and get him back on the side of the United States and the Allies. So that's the kind of things that are happening. But these battles are happening all throughout time. And some of our soldiers are people that have kind of come into this from all periods of time, from way back in history and even into the future, to the point where it's billions of years in the past, billions of years in the future. We have aliens that are fighting this war as well. And it's a really interesting concept. There's a lot of dialogue and thinking about like what is the point of war? Can it really change anything? Who is on the right side of some of these wars? There's a lot of interesting thoughts and ideas that come up about that. And that was probably my favorite part of this book. Now, some of the problematic parts of this book, are entertainers. There's on this little bubble out of space and time, this big time, there's 3 guys and 3 girls, and they're there to kind of just help these soldiers out and kind of get them back on their feet. And they have all kinds of different ways to do this. Our main character, her name is Greta, and she does many different jobs. One of them is basically she's a prostitute here to kind of, help these soldiers out in a way. And some of that gets pretty problematic. We have Fritz Leiber writing a lot of the story from her point of view. And in my opinion, he didn't do the best job writing from a woman's point of view, especially someone who's in this type of situation. That's probably the most problematic part that a lot of people are going to have with this one. Another thing that I guess it could be good or bad, but the whole story takes place basically in a day inside of this big time. And so a lot of what we get, the context of what's happening is just these characters talking to one another, telling them each other's stories, but it's all done right in this little bubble. And I've heard some people talk about this book as being more of a play than a novel. And I could see that because everything happens in kind of one room with a very small cast of characters, and it's all kind of being told through this dialogue and through being inside of a few of the characters' heads. Now, there is a little bit of a plot device that keeps the plot moving. Besides this ongoing change war, there is something that kind of threatens everybody inside of this little room, this big time, and they kind of have to puzzle out how to get out of this issue. It's a very dangerous situation they find themselves in. They could all die, and they have to, like I said, puzzle their way out of this. It's almost like an escape room or something like that. And it's pretty interesting, but you could tell, I don't know if it was just thrown in to give this little short novel some sort of plot direction, because it's so short and you've got such a expansive idea with this time war that it's really just kind of honed in, and you get that in the background, and this kind of issue that crops up on this space station is what kind of drives the plot towards the end. There is some interesting twists and some things that happen with that, but overall it was the story just didn't seem long enough to really get into anything. So that's my biggest issue with this one. There's the concept is fascinating. This idea of this issue that crops up that these characters have to get out of is pretty interesting, but there was never enough time spent on it. There was definitely not enough time spent on our characters, and that was kind of a big letdown. But I will say Fritz Leiber has a very interesting prose. He's like no other author I've read. He kind of has this weird slang that he throws in. I think English teachers would mark up his stories. It would be covered with red of wanting them to change things, but somehow it sort of works. And he introduces some interesting puns and plays on language. There's some German that's thrown into this one. Some parts of this were really interesting, but overall it was kind of a letdown in the end, just because it was so short and he didn't get to flesh any of these parts out completely. Now, that being said, The Wanderer was really long, and I thought that got in its way, and it was way too long, and he tried to get into it too much. And so I definitely like this book more than The Wanderer, but still not the biggest fan of this one. I do want to definitely read more from Fritz in the future. I know he wrote another book that I have here called Change War, and this is a collection of short stories that all take place in this same universe of the Change War. So I'm kind of interested in that. I'm also interested in, I think it's called Gather Darkness and Conjure Wife. So I'm not giving up on Fritz. I still, there's a lot to like with some of the stuff he was doing, but I think it's like the execution just doesn't always work out for me. But I don't know, let me know what your guys' thoughts are on Fritz. I know he can be a little bit polarizing. I know a lot of people like his Fawford and the Grey Mouser stories. I eventually would like to probably get to those at some point too. But this one was just another kind of maybe mid-novel, short novelette, or whatever you want to call it. Probably going to give this one 3 stars, but that's going to do it for this video. I think next up I'm going to be reading Masks of the Illuminati by Robert Anton Wilson. So look for that video coming out next. And once again, thanks for watching.